Hi guys, welcome to another review, CCA Phoenix this time. This is the latest from CCA. I'm sure many of you know, but CCA is basically a subsidiary of KZ, and so there's a lot of commonality in their products. The Vader, for example, from KZ has the CCA Trio, which is basically the same thing. So there's a lot of IMs which are shared between them. There is, however, a slight little difference in tuning always. Um, and ultimately you could say that KZ tries to cater for the more let's say fun crowd, the crowd that wants the more engagement, while CCA tries and has always tried to be the more polished kind of sound. Anyway, the Phoenix. This is an interesting departure from what we usually see in terms of KZ and CCA. First of all, the packaging, very nice. I like this whole packaging vibe that they've done here. Really cool. IMs come over there. It brings a little pouch for the actual IM, not a case. Decent enough tips. I mean, it's nice. It is genuinely very nice. And a welcomed surprise. The other thing which is also different is the fact that they are using an LCP driver, which is something that again is a novelty. KZ and CCA usually share their drivers, whatever series they are. The latest one has been the super linear drivers, which KZ has used in basically all of their single DDs with different shell designs or slight differences in shell designs, implementations of the tuning, but basically it's always the super linear driver. And CCA, I still hadn't seen any implementation of that driver. And well, it's not in the Phoenix that we're going to see it. There is another single DD which I saw some rumors which is also going to be released. Well, at least it seems to be another single DD, and maybe, who knows, maybe that one does have the super linear driver. Anyway, I've brought out here the KZ Saga, the balanced version, the KZ Zenith, obviously the CCA Phoenix, and the CCA Polaris. I could have brought out significant more models, more variations of this single DD formula, but I thought that these were the ones that perhaps made the most sense. The Zenith because it's the top of the line, and the Saga in the balanced version tries to emulate a little bit the same vibe but at a lower price. There are other ones that are even cheaper with plastic shells which also do the same kind of basic sound profile, but these two were the ones that made the most sense. The Zenith about $50 odd in terms of price. The Saga can be had now as low as $20. No, actually below $20, $18 if I'm not mistaken, which is value for money when you consider it's a nice metal shell. It's got a solid build. Nice, really nice. On this end, the Polaris, which might, like the Zenith, also has the adjustable tuning switch. It's not a full metal shell, it's a combination plastic and metal. This can be had for like $12 or $14 from Linsoul. And one of the nicest single DDs that has ever come out of KZ and CCA, well, and in particular of CCA, without a question. The CXS was another model which they had, which was pretty decent as well. But this is something else. This is special, and again for the price. And now the Phoenix. This is priced at around $35, between $28 and $35. So kind of, I would say, Saga money when it is the same value as the Saga when it initially came out. It does bring a nicer cable than the other, well, except for the Zenith, but it does bring a nice cable with it. The tips, like I said, are half decent. These are not the stock tips, but the stock tips are pretty decent. And then the shell as well is a nice metal shell. It looks the part. It looks the business. It fits pretty decently as well. No real headaches there. Let's talk sound. Well, I guess the one that is well, look, let's make something clear here. There isn't a lot of difference between any of them. in terms of their overall tuning. All of them have got great bass, especially the Polaris and the Saga, I would probably say, are the ones that have the most bass, while the Zenith and the new Phoenix are the ones that have probably the most polished bass. I'm not. I'm trying not to. I was trying not to say things this way, but I think this is the best so that you can understand more or less where I'm trying to position them. As I said, the differences are not monumental in terms of how the bass is done in any one of these IEMs. Obviously, metal shell, it will come across one way, resin shell will come across a different way. I'm using basically the same tip always, except for the Polaris, which I'm using a white bore, which does benefit its sound. But bass is very similar, okay? Ultimately, like I said, you notice that the bass here on the Zenith and on the Phoenix is the best bass because of the balance that is struck between the frequencies. That's that's I think that the main thing here. Not that the Saga is much behind, if I'm truthful, much behind the Phoenix. It isn't, and you'll understand. But the Saga does have more bass. Yes, it does have more bass, and because it has more bass, there will be times where it just becomes a little bit overpowering. Were it not for the fact that the actual super linear driver that they used here in the Saga, and they use here as well in the Zenith, but were it not for the fact that the driver is as good as it is, I think that this would be a mess, in the sense that it would be an IM reminiscent of KZ's past, where the bass was always very prominent but wasn't really a high quality bass. There was tons of it, but not high quality. The bass here in the Phoenix, although it's not a super linear driver, it's an LCP driver, like I mentioned, it is been well done. It's got enough weight, enough presence, enough clarity, and it is, like I said, a bass which pends towards more the bass of the Zenith than necessarily the oh my god, the Saga. As for the Polaris, there are similarities between the two CCAs, without question. But yes, even though we do have the tuning switches here, ultimately the Phoenix is the better IEM. It is the IEM that, and I'm sure it comes down to the driver, because this uses an older driver, not the super linear driver like we see here. It's just the better polished overall, the better balanced IEM. Would I have liked to have seen some tuning switches here on the CCA? Well, not necessarily. I mean, that's the truth. Not necessarily. In terms of mids, the Zenith, I think one of the things that was unanimous in terms of the Zenith is that the balance that was struck between the bass and the mids is really good. If you don't know that you are listening to the Zenith, you definitely will be impressed, and you will think you're listening to some more, let's say, high-end brand, because that balance that's been struck, the tonality, the timbre of the Zenith is very, very good. In another review I did recently, where I talked about the TRN Starfish, I mentioned the Conch as being one of the nicest IEMs under $100, and when I said that, I actually should have remembered the Zenith, because the Zenith also does fall into that group of really solid single DDs, and especially when you consider the price. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I think the biggest advantage of the Conch ultimately over the Zenith here is the fact that it has those exchangeable nozzles, which confers a little bit more tuning versatility as opposed to the Zenith. And the Zenith, as is the case with a lot of the latest IEMs from KZ, they rely heavily on the actual how can I say, processing that they use from the internal passive crossover to kind of get the curve they want to get in terms of the sound that they're looking for. And it's, you know, it's something that when you compare certain IEMs, you come to notice if there's a certain processing or not of the sound. It's a difficult one to understand, to kind of try and explain, because you have to actually listen and experience it. I'm going to try my very best. For example, when you listen to the conch, you can, and other single DDs like the conch of that same quality, the Key Fine Clean and Chapeau and so on and so forth, you feel that if there is any sort of crossover being used there, it isn't in any way adding anything to the sound. So what you're basically hearing is, what you see is what you get, kind of a vibe. When you listen to some of the KZ models that have been released lately, because of the fact that they use a lot of processing in terms of that crossover, so they use a lot of Zobel networks to do away with the peaks and issues that occur with the actual driver, I guess maybe in an attempt to create that like I said, that perfect sound and mitigate the shortcomings of said drivers. But that does sometimes bring with it you picking up on it, and one of the ways that you pick up on it is that you have to give it a little bit more power. You have to. It kind of seems like. I mean, you guys know that I like using my NX7, okay? And with my NX7, I can basically max it out with the Zenith. I can basically max it out with the Saga. I can max it out with the Phoenix. I cannot max it out with the. I reach, let's say, the limits of the actual earphones with the Polaris. And I think it's all down to, like I said, that crossover network that's being used in these IEMs to achieve the sound that they're looking for is altering, you know, the overall impedance, the overall capacitance, the overall inductance of the whole thing, and it makes it a more difficult IEM to drive, and one that, like I said, on occasions you kind of feel that the sound is being manipulated. Okay, it's not that it's a bad thing, because obviously they all sound phenomenal, but you can feel it anyway. Moving ahead, the truth is this: the Zenith, like I was mentioning a few minutes ago, is definitely a very solid sub $100 IEM. Definitely very solid. Even with you know, its little minor shortcoming that I was talking about now, it is a very solid IEM, and it does deserve to belong to that exclusive group that I was talking about. Obviously, because it's now costs $50, it's not as impressive as something like the conch, and that's where the conch again makes itself stand out. It's because, I mean, for the fact that you know, when you consider the fact you can get it for $25 sometimes, it's a hard one to beat. It's a hard one to surpass. Anyway, I've been talking about here the Saga and the Zenith and so on, and I haven't been mentioning what we want to know about, which is the CCA, the Phoenix. The Phoenix, in a nutshell, okay, in a nutshell, is, and although the graph, when you look at it, you will not, that's not the perception you will get from it. The Phoenix is in essence a Zenith, okay, where the biggest difference that I found between the two of them was that the tonality here of the Phoenix is slightly more open, okay, ever so slightly more open, and in terms of the extension past 10K, there are occasions where it gives off the sensation of being slightly bigger in terms of overall soundstage and imaging and so on. That's truthfully the only difference that I found between the two of them. Mind you, I'm talking about really now paying attention to every last detail and nitpicking and going through songs that I really know well. LCP drivers by nature are drivers which will be a little bit more bass heavy, a little bit more warm in their presentation, and that's something that when you look at the graph, you will say to yourself, okay, it's going to be brighter than the Zenith. No, it isn't. It's about the same. Although it's been tuned to have that extra energy, it's basically the same as the Zenith, and that's why I say that it's it's almost like the Zenith with just a smidge here and there of extra little detail, but it's very much a situation of trading blows. Honestly, there isn't genuinely much in it. They are both really good IEMs, and much like the Zenith is an improvement over the Saga, and it's just the price here that ultimately will kind of be the decision maker. The Phoenix is a substantial improvement over the CCA, the Polaris. Breaking it down very briefly, bass, like I said, really well done. It's clean, it's detailed, it's energetic, it resolves well. Mid's really good. Female and male vocals are basically the same. No real area where there's no real one of them that stands out. Detailed retrieval, soundstage, imaging, timbre and tonality. In terms of technicality, I would say that soundstage and timbre and tonality are the standout features of the Phoenix. I would say that even compared to the Zenith, it has a slightly larger soundstage. Imaging about the same, timbre and tonality is about the same as well. They are, truthfully, they very similar, very similar. There is not much difference. I think the advantage here of the Zenith maybe is the fact that it's got those tuning switches, so you can make it, if you want, sound a little bit more detailed, but that will be at the cost of obviously losing some of the bass, and shifting the overall sound to be a more mid-centric sound. Guys, and honestly, in a nutshell, that's basically it. There's really not much more that I can say. CCA Phoenix, definitely a solid model from them. I think, and I'm positive that there are going to be improvements over this formula that they've now created here. As compared to its other brothers, like I said, it's better than the Saga, without question. On par with the Zenith. They kind of trade blows there sonically, better than the previous CCA offering, the Polaris, in terms of its best single DD. So in that aspect, yes, it's ticked the right boxes. It's the best single DD that CCA has made, and it's up there with the best that KZ as a company is able to offer. And like I said, it's interesting because with CCA and with KZ, with their products, you can always kind of see a common denominator in the build and everything, and you can kind of say to yourself, all right, this is definitely KZ, it comes from the same factory, so on and so forth. With the CCA, with the Phoenix, it was the first time that I didn't get that feeling. I almost get the feeling that this was kind of outsourced, although I'm sure that's not the case. But that's kind of almost the vibe that I get. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention, it's available in other colors as well. This is the obviously gray one, but there's a purple one that I'm going to actually try and get my hands on, because at least in pictures it looks really nice. So yeah, that's it. Guys, let me just quickly show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay, so let's start here with the graphs. I'm going to show you first the graph of the KZ Saga Bass Edition. And as you can see, monstrous amounts of bass. It's self-evident. The next one that I've just placed is the Balanced Edition, a much more coherent balance of the bass to the mids and to the highs, and that's the name again. The next one I'm putting up now is the Zenith. Again, this here is related to, I think, the switches somehow. I don't know why it's doing it. It does it on both channels, left and right. So, but it is what it is. The balance of sound again has been slightly more polished, and there's a little bit more extra information here, and the bass has been brought down. So of the Zenith and of the Saga balanced, definitely the Zenith is the more polished sound, the more mature sounding IM, without question. As for the Tripoan, as for the CCA, this is the Polaris, okay, and the one that I'm going to show you now in red is the Phoenix. The Phoenix, as you can see, well, graphically they kind of look very similar to both CCA models, but what is important now here is how does the Phoenix, and when we take here the 100 Hz, you see that balance again. So it's all about being more balanced, more coherent in the way that it sounds. If you look at that balance there, and I now put, and I'm going to put it in black, put the Zenith up so you guys can compare, you see what I was talking about in terms of that balance that struck. You would think by looking at the graph that the Phoenix is going to be more detailed, more information up top. No, that's not really the case. They kind of are very similar. I mean, truthfully, very, very similar. Even this extra information that the Phoenix has here as compared to the Zenith, it's not as much as what the graph would lead you to believe. And that's basically it, guys. I mean, just looking exclusively at the graph of the Phoenix, nice bass. I mean, we're talking about a gain of roughly 10 dBs, give or take, 9.5, about the same thing for the pinna gain. No bleeding to the mids, nicely detailed, peaks at the just over 3K and then drops off nicely. It's a really nice solid tune. I mean, there's really nothing. I mean, just for the sake of argument, this is the TRN conch, okay. The conch does sound more detailed up top, although graphically doesn't look like it by virtue of it being a DLC driver. So again, what I've said countless times, that material will play an important factor on how the overall sound is perceived. If you didn't know, you would say no, the CCA is going to be the more detailed IM, and it's not the case. The conch is got a little bit more detail up top as compared to the CCA. And that's that, guys. Honestly, there's really not much more that I can say. Any other questions that you might have, or any things that you want me to clarify, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer as quickly as possible. You take care now. Bye-bye.